Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo Buddhaya, and welcome to another video at Shraddha Media Network. Today's video is being sponsored by the family Mr. A. Kasun-Chamikara and Mrs. W.A. Vindhya Arunudani. And the main aim of this sponsorship is to wish all beings welfare and happiness. Today's sermon, I want to talk about 3 special characteristics. And the Buddha explains these 3 characteristics to show the reality of the world. These 3 things are common to everyone, whether it be the past, whether it be the present, whether it be the future, whether it's a physical state or a mental state. These 3 characteristics can't be avoided by anyone or anything. The first characteristic that he talks about is the word anicca. Anicca translates into English as impermanence. The Buddha explains everything in this world is subject to impermanence, to change. But sometimes the word impermanence isn't good enough to explain the word anicca. Impermanence involves a creation. It also involves a change, and it also involves destruction. It doesn't just mean change. At one point in the Buddha's life, he picks up some soil in front of the monks, and he asks the monks, which is greater, the amount of soil that is stuck underneath my nails, or the amount of soil that is on this great earth? And the monks reply, Buddha, you cannot compare the amount that is in the great earth to the minute amount that is stuck under your fingernails. The Buddha says, monks, I do not see even the amount of soil that is stuck under my fingernails as an amount that is not subject to impermanence. Everything is subject to impermanence. Everything is subject to change. That's the first characteristic he talks about. The second characteristic the Buddha talks about is suffering. The Pali word for suffering is dukkha. Suffering, the Buddha explains, is caused by impermanence. Everything which is subject to impermanence has the innate ability to produce suffering. Let's think about it like this. Let's say you own something like a beautiful jumper that you bought from your favorite store, and you're very much attached to it, and you very much desire it. One day when you come home, you realize it's missing. It's been lost, or someone's taken it. What happens to you then? What do you feel? You feel suffering. But what was that suffering caused by? It was caused by the impermanent nature of the jumper. Impermanence doesn't just mean something being lost. It doesn't just mean something being stolen. It also means decay. If it comes to us, or a relative, or someone we love passing away, the same rule applies. That person is impermanent. They're subject to old age, sickness, suffering, and death. And if we cling to something in this world, we become too attached to something in the world that is impermanent. It will innately produce suffering. So the first 2 characteristics were impermanence and suffering. The last characteristic is something a little bit trickier. The Buddha uses the word anatta. Anatta is meant to be non-self. Now, the word non-self doesn't translate well into English from the Pali, but I'll try my best to explain it to you. Non-self works like this. The Buddha explains that we often, when it comes to things in the world, when it comes to yourself or other people or things that you own, you feel like they belong to you. You feel that they are under your control. You feel that you can maintain them. But what the Buddha is explaining is there is nothing in this world that is truly self. There is nothing that you can control over a period of time. Let's go back to the example of the jumper. We felt that the jumper was yours. We felt that the jumper was ours. We felt like that we owned it, that it would be a permanent thing. So we decided to cling to it. We relied on it to produce happiness for us. But if the jumper really belonged to us, could someone have stolen it? Could someone have taken it? Could it have been subject to loss? Could it have been subject to decay or wearing away? Because these things become impermanent on their own without any of our influences, the Buddha explains that these things are all non-self. They are not under your control. We then realize that impermanence itself produces suffering. We receive suffering from the impermanent nature. And once suffering arises, sometimes we wish for it to disappear. If it's a lost relative or a lost friend, we tell our minds, I don't want to be upset, I don't want to be sad. But normally, do we find that the sadness goes away on its own, or does it come under our control? The truth is, it doesn't come under our control. Suffering itself is non-self. Whatever is impermanent, it will produce suffering, and both those things are not under our control. So the Buddha describes everything in this world as non-self. So impermanent, suffering, and non-self are the common things in this world. And unfortunately, we do cling to things in the world. We do like things, and it's our human nature to do so. But sometimes we experience suffering in our lives. And the common perception about suffering is it's something that shouldn't be felt. If someone does experience it, or if someone does feel it, it's something that's abnormal. It's not something that should be experienced. It should be avoided at all costs. But the Buddha disagrees. Although suffering is not a good thing to experience, sometimes in life, the best lessons that we learn are moments of suffering. They're not during moments of happiness. Suffering is where you can see the nature of impermanence. When it comes to happiness, we're normally blinded, and we feel that this happiness will become permanent. So we become blind to the reality of the world. But during suffering, we often go on a search for why this became suffering. Why are we feeling upset? And well, sometimes, if we're wise enough, we'll notice that it's because of a change. It's because of impermanence. It's because I clung or desired something that was not under my control. Sometimes in life, suffering is just a stepping stone to receiving happiness. Sometimes the end of suffering is not always a loss. Sometimes it's just a stepping stone. In the same way, just because we gain something in life, it doesn't always mean we win at the end. Just because we lose something, it doesn't always result in a loss. So when we do come across suffering in our lives, whether it be at school or at university or at a job, if we can patiently endure the suffering, sometimes there'll be something to learn in that moment, or you'll realize at the end that it happened for the best. A long time ago, there was a beautiful young daughter from northern India, and she came from a very wealthy family. She was so wealthy that her parents protected her at all costs. She lived at the top floor of a 7-story mansion where she was guarded 24/7 by fearsome men. And she lived there for her whole lifetime. Her beauty excelled anyone in any of the other kingdoms of northern India. And her fame did spread through the city. So her parents guarded her. When she lived at the top floor, she never stepped down from luxury. She was supported by servants constantly looking after her, attending to her. And she lived there for a long time. But as she was living there, she became involved with one of the male servants that was working there, and she eventually fell in love. And now at the time in India, the normal age for marriage was 18 or 19 years old. And when she grew up to that age, her parents, because she was from a very wealthy family, decided to find her a good husband, which they did do. But this young daughter was already in love. When her parents arranged a marriage for her, she dressed up like one of her servants and escaped from the palace and ran away. She met her lover in the city, and they traveled to a city from there far, far away. And when they got to this next city, they didn't reside there either. They went to a rural village and decided to build a home there. Now, the servant wasn't a very wealthy man, so he did some farming and some crop work, and she was reduced to doing menial chores around the household. But they lived happily. They lived a simple life, and they were still very much in love. The parents back at home were distraught that their only daughter had left, and they searched everywhere in the kingdom for her, but to no avail. The couple, eventually, after a good couple of years, the beautiful young woman became pregnant. After she became pregnant, she went to her husband and made a request. She said, "My husband, my parents will have a soft spot for our new child. Let's go there for my childbirth, and they will surely forgive us. They will forgive you for what you did." But the husband was very much afraid. He very much didn't want to go, and he begged and begged his wife, "Please don't take me there. They will kill me, they will execute me, or they will punish me. Let's not go." But this young woman was very much insistent in seeing her family. One day, while the husband went out to do some farming and crop work, she took some bags and she left for the long journey home. The journey would take her a good couple of months, and she began. As she was traveling, her husband came home and desperately looked for her. And immediately when she wasn't home, he realized she has run away back home. So he too left his household and went looking for her. And because the young woman was pregnant, she was traveling very slowly. The husband quickly caught up with her. When they caught up, the husband fell down onto his knees and begged this woman, "Please, please don't let me go back to your parents' house. They will kill me." But this young woman was persistent. Together they journeyed back towards their old home. But after a short distance, the young woman, she started getting childbirth pains. And in the end, what happened, she gave birth to a beautiful baby boy underneath a tree. And because the boy was born, they realized that there was no point in going home after the child had been born. Their parents wouldn't be very happy. So they went back home. And they lived as a family of 3 for a long time. After a good couple of years again, she started to give birth to her second child. And when she was getting close to childbirth, her husband, she asked her husband again, "My husband, I would like to go this time for my parents, for my childbirth." And again, the husband wasn't very happy, and he begged her, "I don't want to go, I don't want to go." But this woman was insistent. She waited until her husband left the house, and again she packed up some things. She held her little boy's hand, who was now 3 or 4 years old, and journeyed through the forest, which would take a good couple of months back home. Again, when the husband came home, he realized that the woman was gone. And when he realized his wife was missing, he desperately went looking for her. And again, he caught up with his son and his wife. He begged and begged and begged the wife that I don't want to go. But again, she didn't listen. They journeyed together. As they were journeying, the monsoon season had just begun in northern India. And there was a terrible storm. And this storm wasn't anything that they'd seen before. And just as the storm was starting, this lady's childbirth pains started to begin. And again, she found herself in the same scenario that she was in a couple of years ago. She quickly said to her husband, "Husband, please, I need some shelter for my child. This rain and thunder is not suitable for me to give birth." And she sent her husband into the woods to make her makeshift shelter. The husband went searching for some palm leaves and other forage that he could find. He looked for wood and he went deeper into the forest. And once he found a suitable tree to gather some wood from, because it was heavily raining, his sweat and water that was falling from the sky mixed as perspiration and started falling to the bottom of the tree. But unfortunately, at the bottom of this tree was an anthill. And in this anthill lived a very fearsome cobra. And as the cobra was staying in his lair, perspiration started falling into his anthill. And as soon as he smelt the human perspiration, he became very angry. As soon as he became angry, he came out of his anthill. As soon as he saw the man, he struck the man. And as soon as he bit him, the man realized what had happened. And in seconds, in minutes, he was unconscious. And in seconds, he lay dead on the ground. Meanwhile, his wife was waiting under the storm, desperately waiting for her husband to come back with the forest and shelter. And she waited and waited and waited and realized that her husband wasn't coming back. She came to the conclusion that out of fear, he had run away. In the middle of the night, while the rain was still pouring, she started to give birth. Her screams were covered by the downfall of rain and thunder. And she did give birth. It rained the whole night, and until the morning, the family stayed under the tree. And the only thing that she could give her crying children was the support of her warm body that was very weak from childbirth. In the morning, she said to her children, "My children, your father is not coming back." She put the small newborn child onto her hip and gave one of her fingers to her older child and started journeying towards her home. As she was traveling, shortly, she arrived at the tree where her husband had chosen wood. And at the bottom of the tree, she saw the body of her husband laying stiff on the ground. She cried, she wailed, and she blamed herself desperately for what had happened. She stayed there for a whole day, mourning him. Again, she started journeying back home to her parents' house because now she realized she had no protector, she had no husband. And she journeyed and journeyed and journeyed, and the rain didn't stop, the thunder didn't stop. The monsoon had arrived fiercely in northern India. And she came to a very fearsome river, which was called the river 𝗙𝗢𝗎. And this river normally, in the hot season, was only knee deep, and it carried cool, pleasant water. But in the middle of this storm, the water had become chest high. As soon as she came to the edge of the river, she realized that she couldn't carry two of her children across. So what she did was she put her older child on the near bank and got the newborn baby into her hands and lifted him high up on her head. And she started wading across the water. She used all her strength, and she was able to cross. And when she arrived on the other side, she put her newborn further on the other side of the bank. She laid him on the ground, stroked his head, and decided journeying back to the other side of the river. And while she was halfway through the river, she turned back to look at her newborn, and she saw something she didn't expect to see. Above the skies, there was a hawk that was circling the air, and he was circling just above the newborn baby. The mother frantically started screaming, frantically started waving her arms in desperate plea to get the hawk to fly away. But the hawk swooped down and mistook the small newborn baby as a piece of meat. The hawk opened up his talons and grabbed the baby and started ascending in the air. The mother, who was in the middle of the river, screamed and screamed and screamed, but her noise was muffled by the sound of the water. Her frantically moving arms did not scare the hawk, and in front of her own eyes, she saw her newborn being carried away. Immediately, she started crying. She turned around to head back to her older child, but something else had happened here as well. The older child, who was watching her mother frantically wave her arms and scream, had taken that movement as a message, took it as a message, thinking that it was an instruction from his mother for him to come to the other side of the river. The 3-year-old baby had no chance in the Whitewater River, and as soon as he took a step into this river, he was washed away downstream. The mother looked down on the other side of the bank to the bottom of the river, but she couldn't see anything. There was no point even going down to see him. There was no chance he was alive. This mother had just lost her husband, had just lost her newborn baby and her older child in the space of a week. She frantically started crying. She wailed and wailed and wailed on the edge of the river. Eventually, she got herself together, crossed the river again, and started journeying back home to her home city. She traveled and traveled and traveled, and she eventually got to the border of her home city. There, she saw travelers coming out of the city, and she, after telling her story, inquired from the travelers of her family back at home. She inquired how they were, whether they were staying in the same residence. But everyone she came across didn't want to tell her. They said, "Please don't tell me about this family. Please don't tell me about this, ask me about this family. I will not answer your question." And they all left. She realized that something was wrong. She realized that something was not right. And eventually, she did come across a lone traveler. And she asked this man, and again this man said, "I can't tell you about this family." She got down to her knees and started begging. She begged and begged and begged to be told. And eventually this traveler gave in. He said that family had a fire in their household last night, and their whole house had burnt down while they were inside it. He pointed down at the city where you could see smoke rising into the sky. "My lady, That is the smoke from the funeral pyre, from their funeral that was conducted this morning. As soon as this lady saw this funeral pyre, she went mad. She lost her sanity. She realized that she had no one. She realized that she was all alone in this world. She realized she had never got the chance to ask for forgiveness from her parents for running away from home. She knew her parents had also died in sadness because of her. She tore off her clothes. She disheveled her hair, and she traveled around the city, screaming and shouting, "I've lost everything, I've lost everything." She became regarded as the crazy woman inside the city. And she went begging for food. She lived in the streets for a long time. This city was called Savatthi. And this city was actually the home to the famous Jetavana Buddhist monastery, which is where the Buddha resided with a group of 1,250 monks. The Buddha lived here for 45 years. He lived there and preached the Dhamma for long periods of time, and it was his main monastery. One day, this lady was traveling by the streets close to this monastery, and as she came close to the gates, people from the monastery started shouting at her, saying, "Don't come here, crazy woman, don't come here. You don't have anything on your body. Don't come here." And while these people were unkindly shooing this woman away, the Buddha saw her. When the Buddha saw her, immediately he told the men and women, "Do not hinder her. Let her come to me." And this young woman came. And as soon as she came close to the Buddha said, "Regain your mindfulness." And as soon as she heard these words, she lost her sanity. She lost her insanity. She lost her madness. She immediately realized that she was undressed. There was an innocent man close by who threw her a cloak that he was wearing, and wearing the cloak, she put her hands together and prostrated at the feet of the Buddha. And having prostrated, knelt down and started speaking to the Buddha. The Buddha listened with all the compassion in the world. He listened with the greatest loving kindness that any being could produce. And she told her story. She told him how she had run away at a young age. She told him how she got pregnant. She told him how she'd lost both of her children and her husband in the space of a week. She told him of the incident that happened at the river. She told him of the incident about hearing the words that both her mother and father had died. Buddha listened attentively. After she finished her story, she knelt on the ground with tears in her eyes, and the Buddha started speaking the Dhamma. He said, "Young woman, Patachara." Patachara was her name. Patachara. Whilst we have been traveling across lifetimes in the cycle of birth and death, the tears that we have shed from losing a mother, from losing a father, from losing a husband, from losing children or anyone that we have loved, is greater than the water that is in the 4 great oceans. That is how much tears you have shed while traveling through samsara. For a person that is alive, a mother cannot provide shelter. Women cannot provide shelter. A father or men cannot provide shelter, nor can kinsmen or children. When old age, sickness, suffering, and death arrive, knocking on your door, there is nothing that can protect you apart from the good and bad that you have done in your lifetime. As soon as this woman had this, she understood the Dhamma. She became what we call in Buddhist philosophy a stream enterer. There are 4 stages to perfect enlightenment. The first stage is stream entry. The second stage is once returning. The third stage is non-returning. And the fourth stage is perfect enlightenment. As soon as she heard the words of the Buddha, she became a stream enterer. When someone becomes a stream enterer, they are protected entirely from ever traveling to the lower worlds. So they can never travel to the animal kingdom, to the ghost realm, or to hell. The next protection that they have is they will fully understand the Dhamma within 7 lifetimes. That is the protection that they receive. One day the Buddha, he explains the happiness of stream entry. He points to the Himalayan mountains and asks monks, which is greater, the amount of the Himalayan mountains or the small 7 pebbles that I'm holding in my hand? And the monks say the Himalayan mountain range is incomparably greater than the 7 pebbles that are in your hand. And the Buddha says, monks, the amount of suffering that you have avoided from stream entry, from achieving stream entry, is like the amount that is of the Himalayan mountains. The amount of suffering for you that is left in the cycle of birth and death is the equivalent to the small 7 pebbles. And as soon as this beautiful woman called Patachara, who had lost everything, heard the Dhamma, she became a stream enterer. A profound distinction in the Buddhist religion. And as soon as she achieved stream entry, she put her hands together and asked the Buddha, I want to become a nun. And she asked to be ordained. The Buddha ordained her as a monastic nun, and she lived peacefully in the monastery for a long time. And there's one beautiful day, she was washing her feet using a pot of water. And as she saw the water first washing her feet and traveling into the ground, she looked at it, she observed it, and using her wisdom, she saw that some of the water, before being pulled into the ground, would travel a far distance. Some of the water would be absorbed into the ground at her feet, and some of the water would be absorbed into the ground halfway. And she thought to herself, life is just like this. Some people die in old age. Some people die when they're young. Some people die in their middle age. But no one knows when they will die. I don't know how long I have left to practice this Dhamma. I must cultivate the good. And she began meditating again. She meditated and meditated into the night, walking back and forth, contemplating deep Dhamma. And to no avail. She was carrying a lamp, and she took it into her small meditation hut. And she was getting ready for bed, as she was tired. She sat on her bed and put the lamp onto her desk, bedside table. And she moved her face closer to the lamp. Just when she touched the wick and blew out the candle, she attained full enlightenment. That was her moment of ending suffering. That was her moment in seeing impermanence, seeing suffering, and seeing non-self. If someone is able to understand these 3 characteristics perfectly, their mind will not be attached to anything in the world. their mind will not cling to anything in this world. And if someone doesn't desire and someone does not cling, they extinguish suffering utterly and completely. They will never become old. They will never become sick. They will never die. They will never be born again. And Patachara won the greatest goal of life. Now, why did we start talking about this story? We started talking about this story because first we started speaking about 3 characteristics that we find in the world. We spoke about the first characteristics being impermanence, the second characteristic being suffering, the third characteristic being non-self. If you look at this story, you can see this nature everywhere. She thought her children were hers. She thought her husband was hers. She thought her parents were hers. She thought happiness was hers. She clung to it. But all those things were impermanent. All those things produced suffering, and none of it was under her control. The moment she understood this was the moment she attained enlightenment. But to achieve enlightenment, which was the biggest win for her, look how much she had to go through. Look how much she had to experience. Did she not have to encounter loss to win in the end? Did she not lose everything to win in the end? Wasn't suffering just a stepping stone to final happiness for her? The same applies for our lives too. Sometimes we will go through suffering and it will feel like the end of the world at the moment. It could be a lost lover. It could be a school that you didn't get into, a university that you didn't get into. It could be a household that you lost, a family member that you lost. And immediately, we do everything we can to avoid suffering. But suffering is the best place to see impermanence. And if we are just patient enough, suffering will teach us things that happiness is never able to teach us. So, from this discourse, remember the 3 characteristics. And remember that if someone is able to understand these characteristics, to remember these characteristics, and see these characteristics practically in their lives, they will be able to achieve the goals that they want to. They will be able to achieve full enlightenment. And if someone can contemplate these 3 characteristics, they won't be held back by the suffering that they encounter in their lives. They can move on from it. And they can become happy again. So, by the power of this merit produced by this discourse and power of the Buddha's teaching, may all of the listeners of this Dhamma sermon be able to understand the 4 noble truths in the 𝗙𝗢𝗟 Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Today's Dhamma sermon by Shraddha Media Network is being sponsored by Mr. M.A. 𝗙𝗢𝗟𝗟𝗢𝗪 and Mrs. W.A. Vindhya Arunodhini. The main reason for sponsorship is to wish all living beings welfare and happiness. So, by the merit produced by this discourse, first we'd like to share all of these merits with all the heavenly deities. May all the heavenly deities who protect us, who guard us, and who protect this human realm, may they increase in lifespan, may they increase in happiness, may they increase in welfare, may they increase in faith, in wisdom, in virtue and concentration. May all the heavenly beings protect Mr. M.A. 𝗙𝗢𝗟𝗪𝗪 and Mrs. W.A. Vindhya Arunodhini and all the family members in their family. May all the heavenly beings be able to understand the 4 noble truths in the 𝗙𝗢𝗟 Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. We'd also like to share all of these merits with all the departed relatives that we have. May all these relatives in their new lifetimes live happily, free from sickness and affliction. And may they all be able to understand the 4 noble truths in the 𝗙𝗢𝗟 Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. We'd also like to share all of these merits with our teacher and preceptor at Mahamona Buddhist Monastery. May Pinwat Lukusami Nahase be free from affliction, free from disease, live a long lifespan, be happy. May all the monks at all of the monasteries and all the monks working hard at Shraddha Media Network, may they also be free from affliction and disease. May they live happily, develop faith, virtue, concentration and wisdom, and may they all be able to understand the Four Noble Truths in the Gautama Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. We'd also like to share these merits with the father of Mrs. W.A. Vindhyaranodini, who is Mr. W.A. Upulsiri Subhananda. May he increase in lifespan, be happy, live a life free from affliction and disease, and may he be able to understand the Four Noble Truths in the Gautama Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. We'd also like to share all these merits with all the sponsors of this broadcasting and to those in their family, to their children, and to everyone who has helped them in their lifetimes. May all of these beings be able to understand the Four Noble Truths in the Gautama Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. We'd also like to share these merits with all the monks at Mahamona Buddhist Monastery, and all to the Anagarika nuns, and all the trainees in expectation of ordination, to everyone at Shraddha Media Network, to all the monthly donors and benefactors of Shraddha Media Network. May all of these meritorious people be free from affliction, be free from disease, have a long lifespan, be happy, and be able to understand the Four Noble Truths in the Gautama Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo Buddhaya.
මෙවැනි වටිනා ධර්මදේශනා ශ්‍රවණය කිරීමට ශ්‍රද්ධා ඩේලි YouTube චැනලය සබස්ක්‍රයිබ් කරන්න.